Good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. This is Dr. Demia here. Thank you for joining in or watching the replay. I know I didn't announce today's live session, but my goal is to get to you all every Monday and provide you with some value and some content that you can use and apply in your leadership roles. So, specifically in your education leadership roles. So, thank you so much for taking the time to either hop in for a hot second, drop a quick note, or even watch the replay, right? And so, hi, my name is Dr. Demia, and I'm here to empower school leaders, specifically urban school leaders, and those that are responsible for the lives of Black and Brown students so that they can transform the instructional culture and feel affirmed in the work that they do, right? As a former school leader of 14 years, I understand the nuances and the demands of school leadership. And my goal now is to do what Margaret Wheatley says, is to have the conversations, be brave enough to have the conversations that matter, right? And I'll add courageous enough to create the disruption that's needed to change the current conditions that our Black and Brown babies are facing. And last week I was special because Monday through Thursday, I had a different guest on, and each guest brought something very special to the table as leaders in the education field with their own perspectives on what is needed in education. Each of them brought a very unique perspective, which was great to listen to and to have conversation around. It absolutely made my whole day. Like, I looked forward to 6 o'clock so that I can get on and have conversations with people around what's needed in education. And so I think I found what I love to do, which is having conversations live, right? And seeing and the thinking and processing in real time. So thank you if you've hopped in or joined in or watched and shared some comments. So thank you for that. And I'm going to tie into some of the work that was discussed last week, because today I really want to talk about this idea. When I was talking to folks last week, this whole idea around the challenges that leaders are having in different ways. And today I want to like lift up where those things could be stemming from and how we can navigate those issues. So today we're going to talk about leadership in crisis. Okay, navigating staffing shortages in schools. I remember all too well what that was like as a school leader, having to open up school and not being fully staffed, right? And then thinking about the strain that that puts on everyone else in the building to ensure that students are getting a well-rounded, nurturing learning environment, right? It is absolutely mind-boggling that we have people that are dropped in left, right, front, and center out of education. And it's kind of like a double-headed coin, like on one side of the coin, it's kind of like, okay, if leadership is not, if education and teaching is not for you, I don't want to put you in front of children and you're doing more damage than good, right? So those are the things that in this leadership role you need to really consider: is what is the impact of the person standing in front of the kids that you have in your building, right? So in today's session, we're going to tackle that challenge and how it's been affecting schools and leaders, specifically you all across the country, right? The staffing shortages. So, did you know that according to a 2022 report by the Learning Policy Institute, teacher turnover rates are averaging around 16% annually, right? And in schools serving low income communities, that number can go as high as 20%. And I'm talking about, you know, low income, urban, and I know there's some rural, low income communities. These are the children that need our help the most. Okay. So these shortages have only worsened since the pandemic. We know the pandemic has severely impacted education, right? So these shortages have worsened because of the pandemic. And with burnout and a lack of administrative support being two of the top reasons educators are leaving their positions, right? So, burnout and a lack of support from administration, you, the school leader, right? What's more concerning is that this isn't just about like filling positions. It's not just getting a warm body in front of students, which is what I was mentioning, alluding to earlier. It's about keeping the teachers we have, right? We just don't want anyone in front of our kids. We don't want warm bodies in front of our kids. We want people who want to be there. And the teachers that we have want to be there. Okay. So it's so important that we help them avoid burnout and build an environment where they feel motivated to stay, right? Take a look at your data. What is your teacher retention rate telling you? So today I'm going to share some leadership strategies that will help you build stronger teams, because that's what it's about. Boosting your staff retention and create a positive work culture despite the staffing shortages, right? You should have people knocking on your door to teach at your school. That's the goal. That is the environment that you want to set. Okay. So let's talk about let's talk about some data. Okay. At the heart of this staffing crisis is a leadership challenge, right? So research consistently shows that authentic leadership, where leaders are genuine, they're transparent and empathetic, plays a significant role in staff retention, right? In fact, a study by the Education Leadership Research Group found that schools with supportive, empathetic leaders saw a 15 to 20% reduction in turnover rates, right? Over 2 years. This is about relationships. This is about how you as a leader are connecting to your staff and supporting them in their growth, not just checking things off a box, right? This is the beginning of the school year. How are you checking in with your staff? This goes to show you this percentage of reduction goes to show you that when staff feel regularly and like genuinely like you feel are genuinely concerned and genuinely connected to them, they're more likely to stick around, even during the tough times. And I talk about this in my book, Decisions by Fire, 3 phases to define your leadership strengths and sharpen decision making. So in phase 3, ethos shift is where you're building and establishing the foundation of a culture where you are connecting to your staff. And so even during the hard times, you still stay the course. Your staff still stay the course, no matter how difficult or challenging things are in your building, right? So now let's talk about 2 actionable strategies, okay, that you can implement today to improve staff retention and build a stronger, cohesive team. All right. So the first strategy is building stronger relationships with your staff. And I'm going to say this over and over and over again. Any opportunity I have, if relationships are absolutely paramount for you to retain your staff, relationships and a strategic plan of support where you are being your authentic self as a leader, right? So get to know your staff personally, right? I'm sure you've heard this before, but it's worth repeating. Leaders who take time to connect with their staff on a personal level foster an environment where people feel seen and heard. This connection will increase loyalty and commitment, right? Your staff will feel closer to you. An action step that you can take for this is start by scheduling regular one-on-one meetings with your staff. And even if you don't have time for the one-on-one meetings, which you should, because we make time. I love what Fahari McKinney said last week is, not having time is not it's an excuse. It's not a reason, right? Make the time to check in with your staff, not to evaluate their work, but just to check in, simply check in. How many times do you walk around in your building and say hello? How you doing today? How was your weekend? Right? Check in and ask how they're doing. Small things make a big difference. The devil's in the details. Those things really do matter. So that's an action step for you, right? Start by regularly checking in. And even if you need to, for yourself, have a checklist who you checked in with today, just to remember, just as a reminder, right? Here's the second strategy: foster a positive work environment, right? Create a culture of openness, of collaboration. A lot of times in education, we feel like we're afraid to say that we don't know how to do something because we don't want to appear inadequate, right? So if you create a culture where openness and collaboration exists, staff will feel like they can share their ideas and their concerns without fear of judgment, right? Put yourself there. How do you feel in a place where you feel like you can speak freely and speak openly, right? Your staff will be more likely to engage with their work and each other if they feel that the environment is safe. There has to be a safe space, right? This contributes to a sense of belonging and, yes, even loyalty, right? Because we're talking about staff retention. So here's an action step for that strategy: begin each of your staff meetings with an open floor discussion, right? I know we have things we got to do. You got to check this off. You got to talk about that. You got to talk about that. But you have to go slow to go fast, right? Begin each staff meeting with an open floor discussion. Doesn't have to take the whole meeting. Allow your team to voice concerns, suggestions, and ideas freely. Then take visible action on their feedback to show that their input matters, right? Now be careful. You have to plan this out, and you have to have ways to steer your staff back away from a potential griping session. But you want your staff to be heard. So set the stage for that. Create the environment for that, right? And so a really interesting statistic that I found was, according to the American Psychology Association, employees who felt supported by leadership are 2.5 times more likely to be satisfied with their job and less likely to leave, even in education. Okay. This is so important for schools who are struggling with staffing shortages, and especially in our Black and Brown communities, our low income communities. We can't afford to have people leaving. So, as leaders, we need to embrace these changes using simply the two strategies that I shared with you. One, build stronger relationships with your staff by checking in, and two, fostering a positive work environment. Okay. If you're watching the replay, share your thoughts. What are some things that you're thinking about? Have you done this before? Hi, Principal Patterson. I'm glad that you hopped on today. Share your thoughts and let me know what you're thinking. What are maybe some pushback? Maybe you've tried something and it wasn't effective. Let's keep the conversation going. Okay. So, one example that illustrates this, using these two strategies, is a district that I worked for. They were experiencing a 20% turnover rate, pretty much, right? So, really close to the national average for in need schools, like our low and most needed schools, right? They began to implement a open door policy, like a genuine open door policy, where the leadership team made it a point to have informal check-ins with teachers every week. Over the course of a year, the teacher turnover rate dropped, right? And the school saw improvement in staff morale and satisfaction, right? You know how they give you those end of the year climate surveys, right? You don't have to wait for those. You can give those every quarter or every semester, right? And even then, if you're checking in regularly, that is your litmus test when you're checking in. That is your qualitative data, because you're connecting with your staff, you're getting a vibe and a feel for how they are engaging with the work. Are they feeling stressed out? Are they feeling burnt out? Right? Check in with your staff. Okay. That's all I had to share with you today. It's going to be a really short live session today because I wanted to touch base on what we talked about last week with the 4 guests and them talking about the social work and equity and restorative practice. And I know with Fahari's session, when we talked about restorative practice, she reminded us that restorative practice starts with the leader. It starts at the helm. How are you being restorative in nature? And each one of the guests last week, if you go back and you watch and listen to the replay, each one of them mentioned slowing down. And in urban education and public education, we have a tendency to move at rapid fire because we know we have work to do. We all know this. But it comes to a point that this pace that we're moving at is a detriment to the actual overhaul and sustainability that is needed in our schools, right? So I need you to consider slowing down, right? I forgot what movie that it was in that phrase comes from, to slow is smooth and smooth is fast. Connecting with your staff, allowing time for them to express how they're feeling at these meetings, having reflection journals. There's one school that I'm working with right now where we are embedding reflection journals every time a team comes together. They take out 5 minutes at the end to talk, to reflect. They set their goals, a goal at the beginning of the year in the reflection journal, and they connect their goal to how this meeting connected to that goal. What does this mean in terms of the actions that they committed to at the beginning of the year? How does it change it? Right? Connecting to the why. So critical. And being really transparent about that and authentic as a leader you will be surprised at how your staff will gravitate towards you when they realize that you are being truly authentic in your leadership. So give it a shot. Okay. So just to recap, I shared 2 strategies today to improve staff retention, right? Building personal relationships with your staff and fostering a culture of openness and collaboration. We saw that schools that focus on authentic leadership and staff well-being can see reductions in as much as 15 to 20%, right? Reduction in turnover. It's amazing. Remember, the key to retaining your staff is making sure they feel valued, supported, and connected to you as a leader. So next week, we're going to dive into another critical area, student engagement. This student engagement should be a series all on its own with multiple parts. I would love to have people on to talk about student engagement and what they're doing in their respective schools to increase engagement. So if you're interested in coming on live and having a conversation, hit me up and let me know. I would love to have conversations with you around what you're doing. That's different. That's out of the box, right? Because last week we talked about doing things that are out of the box and being courageous. What things are you doing that are out of the box to increase student engagement? So I'll be sharing some strategies next Monday, to increase student participation and reduce the high absenteeism that we're seeing across the country. So make sure that you tune in and join me next Monday. I'm going to put it up in LinkedIn and as an event. And so I hope to see you there. Okay. And as usual, keep going. I know it's the beginning of the school year. This is officially fall. And so right now you're starting to see the behaviors in that, the honeymoon period is over. This is the time when you need to dig into those restorative practice. So go to last week's session and listen to Fahari Makini talk about those restorative practices that are so desperately needed in schools. Okay. And keep going, school leaders. We need you. And I will see you next Monday. Have a fantastic evening.